It's a good day. It's the best day. It's possibly the best day. Lots going on. We're here for the new moon in Leo, which happened this morning in the wee hours. It's like 4 or something. First and foremost, new moon is the beginning of the creative process, the beginning of the creative potential of things, because it's coming out of nothing. The moon is in its least formulated energetic state, and it moves in its relationship with the sun past it and does this creative cycle. Once per month we move into a new lunar cycle. So we're in the Leo lunar cycle now. It happened at 12 degrees of Leo. And that's the first little seed of things. The second seed, Leo is ruled by the sun. So we get these two new moons, which are the kind of anchor points of the lunar and solar energies for the year. And there's other things to toss into it, but for the sake of this discussion, momentarily, let's just assume that they're the only ones that we're worrying about. The moon rules Cancer. So the Cancer new moon is kind of the lunar anchor point. Each year, the Cancer new moon creates an anchor point for the lunar process for the whole year. And then we get the Leo new moon about a month later, ruled by the sun. So we get this solar anchor point in the kind of creative flow of the whole year. And Leo itself is the ruler of the kind of creation that is to be presented. It's the dramatic, the theatrical, the overstated and overexposed and totally just in your face kind of nature, right? It's like right in front of you because it needs to be seen. It needs to be seen. It's not that it wants to be seen. It needs to be seen. The Leo energy is that which needs to be shown to the world. So you get theatrics and things of that sort. You also get you get things like monarchies or oligarchies. The big like overbearing or overburdened rulers at the top. You get kings and queens and nobility, and so the kinds of things that are always visible, and so that visibility plays into this lunar cycle. So the creative process that you wish to start off, or the intentions that you want to set within this space, can and arguably should be ones that you intend to bring out into the world in a real way. There's something that you're creating for the sake of offering it to the world, and that's every creative process. That's every lunar cycle. That's every intention you set. There's a point where it meets the world and thus must evolve with the world's informed consent, we'll say. The Leo new moon is the archetype of that. It's the archetype of creating to give, creating to offer. It's the archetype of showing that which is in a way that is hyper visual. It's hyper apparent. That's why you get things like, you have mundane life, and then you have things like Shakespeare, which is not mundane life. It's a archetypal representation of millions of potential mundane lives, all packed into a single character is the evaluation. Putting all of these things into one character and moving them into the world so that the world can see it, which is why so many people resonate with the works of Shakespeare or the great works of other famous playwrights and artists and musicians. It's because they're interacting with an archetype. And it's not reduced to the mundane or the singular or the usual. It is amplified to its archetypal potential, which is an interesting thing to think about. If anyone is watching or ever sees this, that's like the concept of public visibility is a very interesting thing. Most people have no desire to actually be in the public sphere at all. Now, everyone should have some influence on some level outside of their own personal self. That's a part of human existence. But as a person becomes more visible, as a person becomes more apparent to the world, as a person increases their visibility, as a person increases their influence, as a person increases their influence, I think, is probably the best word for it. As a person increases their public influence, they move closer and closer to an archetype and further away from a mundane, usual individual, which is why we have celebrities, which is why we have this constant focus on people in power, people in rulership or authority positions, because they're closer to an archetype. They resonate more deeply with more people. And in that, there's a kind of, not a loss necessarily, but a setting aside of the individual nature and a moving toward the more condensed archetypal form. And with any luck, with any conscious processing of the moving into that, you're moving into an archetype that is representative of you instead of moving into an archetype that is only representative of the public, which is important for Leo season, because Leo is constantly bouncing themselves off of people around them. So the trap is to only ever do that which gains a positive response from the outside world. The solution is to allow the input of the outside world, but to only let that move you toward your own decided archetypal self. And whether that's in a public forum or not, that's important. It's definitely important. So that's Leo. That's the new moon. The bigness, the energy of it is like, get it out, make it bigger, make it, not, bigger is the wrong word. Purify that which you're trying to make and let it be closer to its archetypal form. Let it be in its dramatic and condensed format, so that when it reaches the world, it reaches more people. With that in mind, we have things harmonizing with all of this. It happened at 12 degrees of Leo. We have Mars, first and foremost, not first and foremost necessarily, but because it's the tightest relationship that this one has, I think. Yes. Mars in Gemini, which is a very exciting thing all by itself. Mars is in Gemini, and Jupiter is in Gemini. And these are, they're far enough apart, we're not quite looking at how they're interacting, but we're close. And that will happen by the time we hit the full moon in Aquarius. So there's that part of it. The interaction with Mars, first and foremost. Mars is a fire planet. Mars in Gemini is like, it's like jet fuel. Mars in Gemini is like jet fuel, but it's on a cognitive level. So we're moving a little more quickly within the mind, and we're communicating in kind of a more pointed way than we naturally would. There's a little more boldness. Oh, speaking of boldness, actually it's a perfect word for Leo. We'll jump back to that. But there's a little more will behind the word. And that interacting with this new moon flavors the whole lunar cycle. So the creative process for which you decide to devote yourself, to which you decide to devote yourself, can be one that is collaborative and communicative, but it can definitely find its flourishing in your ability to communicate it, which is going to come into very deep focus with Mercury in retrograde. Again, talk about that in a minute. But the Mars in Gemini, pointed communication, it is the pen is mightier than the sword. That is a perfect process, a perfect thought within the Mars and Gemini framework. The power of the word is exactly what is needed in this. The ability to communicate with pointed precision and what did I say before? I really liked it. The will behind the word. There we go. More will, more fire, more Agni, more vital energy behind this otherwise neutral force that is the air, that is the wind, that is Gemini. The will behind the word, driving forward your creative pursuits and endeavors, or your just new avenues of discovery or movement, whether it's a creative quote unquote process, or if it's just a process that is inevitably creating something. Jupiter in Gemini. Here's where we get to the bigger part. Jupiter in Gemini is well, as much as it is feeding the theatrical, it's feeding it in one of two ways, and you decide which of those two ways is being played out in your sphere of influence over the next lunar cycle. Jupiter in Gemini can and will expand the reach of the words that are spoken. It will help them land with people, and it will ultimately it gets them into the right place. Now you have to decide what those words are. Leo's trap is only giving people what they want. And the trap of Jupiter in Gemini is being willing to lie for that process, for that purpose. Look at politics at the moment. It's wild. The ability to say something that is just blatantly untrue and to not be, chastised into oblivion for it in the political sphere is rampant. And it's much more publicly visible right now, especially with the new moon in Leo and Leo in general, but just because of Jupiter in Gemini. The ability to say something that is just blatantly outside of the realm of reality and have that land on people and just be accepted. That potential is in every word you speak with Jupiter in Gemini. So allowing yourself to be as crisp, clear, honest, and pointed as you possibly can, so that what you're creating is honest, so that what you're creating is truthful. The reasons you're doing it are honest and real. You're not just doing it to please someone else. You're not just doing it because it might be received well. You're doing it because you think it's good. You think it's good. So you do it. So you do it, and that is how it, what just flew through my head. By their fruits you will know them. The results of what you do is how people will know you. So if you're creating something that's good and honest and truthful to yourself, then people will know you as that essence of truth. Not the thing, whatever it is, if it's a thing at all, but the honesty behind it. That is how people will recognize you and see you and decide to invest their time and energy in you. To do it honestly gives people that sense of real noble cause within another person. So this is a good time if you're trying to do something that's like big and important and you really believe in it, to put this into the ears of other people, to give people a chance to interact with your honest desire and passion. Mars and Jupiter in Gemini pointed, I'll recap that later. We also have Venus in Leo, which is important, but touch on that in a minute. The third thing that is very tightly associated with this, it's kind of the same thing, but different, associated with this lunar cycle, the nodes of the moon. Now, particularly the north node of the moon, because it's in this kind of flowing movement toward the north node in Aries. It's separated by a few degrees, but energetically is connected, it's tied in. And we're moving toward a societal kind of courage and the ability to say and do and form resolve in a way that is actually beneficial to society. We've lost a lot of our courage, and the need is, it's calling it up again. It's coming back. So there's more of a kind of courageous nature to people and things at the moment. The new moon sets in a cycle of that kind of coming into the public forum, and that'll come into social interactions and otherwise kind of extraneous dealings. And specifically because this new moon is in Leo, the sign of outward projection, focus on how that outward projection is actually being received, and also understand that the simple act of saying something just because you know it needs to be said is a very powerful thing. Is a very powerful thing. So there's that element. You can play that into your creative. It's a stew at this point. It's a stew. So the creative stew. That's an element of this particular thing. What should I bounce back to first? Mercury retrograde. So Mercury will station retrograde in 8.5 hours or something, somewhere in there, later this evening, Pacific time. And Mercury retrograde brings us into a keen focus of how we communicate. So we bounce back into this. How is our passion? How is our creative flair and our dramatic, how's our dramatic interpretation of the world moving out properly in a way that is clear? Again, we get back to the clarity of speech and the clarity of communication, the clarity of listening to understand what another person is trying to communicate comes into focus with this, and it definitely is amplified in its necessity by Mars in Gemini and Jupiter in Gemini. We have to communicate clearly and honestly, otherwise, what the fuck are we doing it for anyway? Mercury is retrograde. It's currently in Virgo, so there's a kind of muted nature to it at the moment, but Mercury is at home in Virgo, so the potency of the retrograde force is real. Let yourself be in a quieter and more meditative space as you begin this creative process. Now, in a few, let me actually check when this happens. In 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It makes its way finally back into Leo a couple of days before the full moon. So it's in 11 days. The So the focus for the time being in this first part of the lunar cycle is like, be in a more careful meditative space and choose the words that you use wisely. Choose the words that you use with tact, with intention, with kind of condensed poignancy. Don't just ramble and yak and talk and try to like force your information out of you into people's ears. Focus on simple ways of communicating what you're trying to communicate. And in that process, in that meditative process of carefully speaking, you find a deeper understanding. Because if you can take something and simplify it, if you can take something and simplify how you communicate it so that more people are able to receive it, then that is a sign of, well, it's a sign of great skill. It's a sign of great mastery. If you look at the difference between a brilliant individual who is making wild advances in some field of study somewhere and someone who's recognized as a genius within that field, the only real difference, besides maybe a few IQ points, is the ability to take what they know, understand it clearly enough to condense it, and also understand other people well enough to communicate that condensed version in a simple and understandable and a graspable manner. You want to take this big amorphous thing of information that you have, because maybe you're a genius and you can hold it all, and turn it into this very, very precisely shaped thing so that people can grab onto it. The grasping of something is necessary. So that is the kind of archetype of Mercury retrograde in Virgo. The ability to take all of the amorphous knowledge that you might have on something and condense it and precisely arrange it in such a way that another person can handle it when you give it to them. You're handing a package. You're passing off a piece of something to another person. And you don't just, the thought that came into mind, you go into a store and you have all of these things. There's fucking clothes everywhere. And the ones that you want, the ones that you actually can receive, are not going to be balled up and thrown at you in separate instances. No, you're going to take it all to this person. They're going to make it a manageable, condensed package. They're going to hand it to you in a way that you can handle it as you move on about your day. It's not like you just get a bunch of clothes dropped in your arms, or 6 pairs of shoes tied loosely together and strung over a stick. No, you get it in a way that you can actually handle it and take off with it. So that's something. Anyhow, Venus also in Leo. This adds, for a short time, there's a bit more romance. There's a bit more passion about the things that we desire. As Venus moves into Virgo later today also, I forgot about that. So Virgo also moves in later today, moves into Virgo. So we get Mercury turning retrograde in Virgo later this evening. Before that even, I believe earlier this afternoon sometime, doop-a-doop. Indeed. Yeah. It's like 7 o'clock this evening. Venus moves into Virgo, moves out of this kind of more flirtatious and outgoing place and into a place of more refined practice. Like if you're in a relationship, then use this time of Venus and Virgo during this. Well, we still get the flavor of Venus and Leo for the whole lunar cycle, which is fucking awesome. But you can move it into a more practiced kind of space where you're paying more attention to details. It's like the passion that exists and is set in motion, that is set in this lunar cycle, you can take it and refine it. That's all. You can take it and refine it. The passion yet exists. Carry it on throughout the lunar cycle and let Venus and Virgo kind of refine different parts of it. And don't fucking use it to like chastise your partner for not doing things right. Rather turn that detailed evaluation on your own self and see how you can amplify and improve and exalt this other person and how they're relating to you. How can you exalt someone else? That is Venus. That's perfect for Venus and Virgo. The exaltation of another person in a relationship. That is Venus and Virgo. So focus on how you can do that. Enjoy that process and just, the lusciousness that comes out of that is going to be great. So there's that. Other important things for this lovely new moon experience. There's other things occurring throughout the week that I'm There's plenty going on. For the lunar cycle, that's that. I'm going to be back on 8/8. We'll talk some more on Thursday about different things going on throughout the month that kind of trigger and amplify this Leo energy. The 8/8 practice that we get into, it's the 8/8 Lionsgate. It's a big hullabaloo, which is fantastic. We love the repeating numbers around here, but it's a big one because it's 8/8/8. The year is an 8 year. So we got all kinds of things going on throughout the day. I'm going to talk about astrology and other things. I'm basically going to do an amateur version of what Remington Donovan is going to do later in the day, but I'll add some other things of my own nonsense in there. We have that, and workshops and classes at all 3 locations as per the usual, and that's just that. So I'll come back on Thursday with some more astrological nonsense to throw at you. Enjoy. Let's momentarily recap. Create with passion, create with the intention of making something that is condensed and refined into its archetype. Don't be too like this is just a one singular thing, unless you really want to. You got a lot of Virgo in your chart or whatever. Really focus on a single thing and get into it. But new moon Leo, create. Be dramatic, be passionate, be engaged, be enraged and engulfed in the kind of flames of mania as you move into something creative. And you can do that without much care for the outside world. Don't focus too much on what the outside world might think about it. They're not going to be focused on you anyway. It's fucking Mercury retrograde. Nobody can focus on anything except for themselves as much as they might try. And then, as you start to communicate what it is you're trying to create, be pointed and precise in your speech. Be honest. Be clear. Be absolutely sure of what you're saying. That confidence, that truth, that reality moves through what you're giving to other people. And that's all we got to deal with. Have an awesome day. Happy new moon in Leo. Happy lunar cycle of Leo. Happy continuation of Leo season, which is an awesome season. Enjoy the passionate and dramatic and overexposed ideas and bodies and thoughts and things. That's it. My name's Teg Prakash. If for some reason you don't know me, hi, I'm an astrologer. Find me on tegprakash.com or at Teg Prakash on Instagram. Let's play. I want to do some I want to do some more astrology readings this summer than I naturally would. I want to get things moving a little more. So I'm excited to play with people and enjoy the co-creative process that might be encouraged. We'll see you later. Salam.